The Board of Education cannot engage in a discussion or debate in response, but will take the information for review and direct the appropriate district employee to respond. Community input opportunities are available on the district website or in person here at our board meetings. We did not receive any community input online, nor do we have anybody attending tonight's meeting for community input. So the meeting tonight is called to order. It is June 16th, 2021, and the time is 6:34 p.m. Our mission is to provide a safe and caring climate and culture in which we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today and tomorrow's society. Les, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I have to ask a question because the camera's on me this way. Should I face the camera or the flag? Gary? All right. Oh, all right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Les. And then next, can you please call roll?
Scott Andresen,
Present.
Al Dahlgren,
Here.
Zach Dorhold. Here. Les Green is here. Shannon Hawes,
Here.
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Here.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Present.
Also in attendance at the meeting. I'm sorry, I was making sure that I was here tonight. Well, the following cabinet members and staff are present at the District Administration Office: Superintendent Willie Jett, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, Lori Posch, Executive Director of Operations, Gary Ganji, Media Technicians, Paul Novak and Gordy Scott, Custodian on site, Steve Hain. The following cabinet members are present virtually: Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, Dr. Lori Putnam, Executive Director of Community Education, Adam Holm, Director of Community Engagement and Communications, Tammy DeLand, Director of Equity Services, Ellen Stewart, Executive Director of Human Resources, Tracy Flynn Bowe, Executive Director of Research, Assessments, and Enrollment, Dr. Sylvia Huff, Executive Director of Student Services and Special Education, Carol Potter, and Executive Assistant, Jan McGuire.
Thank you, Les. Next up, I'm looking for approval of tonight's board meeting agenda.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Scott and a second by Al. Les, can you please call roll?
Monica Segura Schwartz,
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Yes.
Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Zach Dorhold. Yes. Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Scott Andresen,
Yes.
Thank you, Les. Next, we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board adopts routinely without debate. Any single member may remove an item from the consent agenda prior to the consent agenda being moved for adoption. On tonight's consent agenda, item A, approval of minutes from meetings of May 5th, 2021 and May 19th, 2021. Item B, approval of bills and other financial transactions in the grand total amount of $3,015,212.79. Item C, approval of personnel staff changes. Item D, acceptance of grant awards and donations. And item E, call for bids on milk. That's it on the consent agenda. Is there any board member that wanted to remove an item from tonight's consent agenda? Okay, so then I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Natalie and a second by Scott. Les, could you please call roll?
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Zach Dorhold. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth. Double yes. I started with you, right? All right, sorry.
Okay, next up, information items. First, we have Preschool for Success presentation, and we have some guests that will be joining us. So Lori Posch, Executive Director of Learning and Teaching, will be introducing them. Welcome.
Good evening, Board Chair Haas, members of the school board, Superintendent Jett. I have the distinct honor tonight of introducing to you two Rotarians who are here to tell you about a project that we have been partnering with them on. We are so excited about this and know that you will be as well. As you listen tonight, please know that we are still in some of the planning stages of this project, but looking to have this exciting preschool program up and running in the fall. So you are going to just be wowed when you listen to John Bodette and Gayla Holmgren tell you about their project.
Or I could use my teacher voice and just sort of project. I'm John Bodette. I'm the president of the Rotary Club of St. Cloud, 147 community leaders whose motto is service above self. And you may know us by some of our signature projects. The Community Outpost, also known as the Cop House, we helped launch that. Pathways for Youth, which was to help youth experiencing homelessness, 16 to 24 years of age in our community. And for 10 seasons, Summertime, which I hope you will all join us starting on June 23rd. So those are our signature projects, and Preschool for Success falls into that category as well. But allow me to tell you a story about how this came about. You won't mind that, will you? Okay. Some of the best ideas come when a group of Rotarians get together and just start talking. And each year we have an evening of erudition, in which we sit down and we explore some writings or a book or something, and then we just talk about it and have a good time. And we were studying some literature, a scientific report on education funding in metro areas and stuff, and we didn't think that was so well done. And then we also talked about a couple of speeches by Frederick Douglass about opportunity and about disadvantages and things. Towards the end of that discussion, we started talking about the achievement gap in our community. And we decided we wanted to do something about that. And so we went to what we felt was the best expert to advise us on that, fellow Rotarian and your superintendent, Willie Jett. And so Willie talked to the group, and he reframed it in a way that I thought was just marvelous. Willie said it's not an achievement gap, it's an access and opportunity gap. And, you know, just the lights went on and stuff. And Willie talked a little bit about the ones that he thinks about the most are the little kids, the 3 and 4-year-olds who may not get a chance to have that opportunity and that access. So as a next step, we invited some of the experts that you see here and up on the screen up there we challenged them a little bit and said, give us a couple of ideas or proposals as to how we could help those young people. So they did their magic, came back, and we met with them. And I think they felt it was kind of like an episode from Shark Tank because, you know, we're business people. We kept asking them questions. Well, what about this? What about that? But it was a great thing. And we settled on the concept that became Preschool for Success. We're very serious about this project, the same way we're serious about Summertime by George or Pathways for Youth or the Cop House or our other community projects. And so we're going to run you through what we would like to partner with you on to help those 4-year-olds who don't have a chance to go to preschool, which is so critical before they go into kindergarten. And Gayla Holmgren's going to start you off and tell you all about it.
Okay, am I on? Yep, okay, great.
Yes, thank you for having us. It's so nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces. Very excited to be here. I'm co-chairing this project, and my co-chair is Gary Marsden, and he asked me to send his regrets. He had planned to be here, but some unforeseen situations came up and he couldn't be here, so he sends his regrets, and he's a great co-chair and he's a great community leader. So I'm excited to have him as my co-chair, and he's been very, very busy. So my job is to start by telling you a little bit about the project. Preschool for Success, in essence, is a preschool for 4-year-olds in 2 high-need neighborhoods. And we're partnering with the school district and the Boys and Girls Club and our St. Cloud Rotary to provide a preschool classroom at the Southside Boys and Girls Club and the Roosevelt Boys and Girls Club. It'll be a half-day program, 15 kids in the morning and 15 kids in the afternoon, and run Monday through Thursday. There'll be 60 kids involved then, and we'll be hiring 2 teachers, 1 for each site, and 2 paraprofessionals, 1 for each site. We'll be using the school district curriculum, and a unique aspect of it, as we visited in our, it's actually more like a book club than, as we visited, was we wanted to provide experiential learning. We wanted these kids in these high-need neighborhoods that maybe don't get a chance to go to the larger community and have enrichment activities. We wanted to put them on a bus and take them places and have them see the community and see some things that they normally wouldn't have the opportunity to do. So that will be a unique aspect of the program. We also found in our research that about 35,000 kids in Minnesota aren't ready for kindergarten when they start, the kindergarten readiness. And we knew that that was very true in our community too, and we talked to some of the school district people about that. And we also saw in the research that for every dollar that was invested in preschool, the economy generated $16 back to taxpayers. So it isn't just an opportunity to make an impact on that access to opportunity for preschool, it's also an economic factor for our community. We believe in the concept that it takes a village to raise a child. As we sat in that group and that we had about a dozen people there that night, there was so much passion and so much commitment that we need to do something in our community about this. And so we have some partners, many partners, and it's growing. Whoop, we missed the part. Oh, there it is. Okay. The school district, of course, the Boys and Girls Club, our Rotary Club, but we're also partnering with the other Rotary Clubs in the area and St. Cloud State University, who will be providing field experience students there, the St. Cloud Technical College, the Initiative Foundation. United Way has been very active with us. We already are working with them in a subcommittee to look at other grant opportunities for additional funding. The Great River Regional Library. Center Care is partnering with us. And a kind of exciting one that came out of our last meeting was a Rotarian who works for Career Solutions and said that they wanted to work with the parents of the children who are unemployed or underemployed and help them find employment. So that was just something out of our last meeting. And we have several other partners kind of in the wings, and we know as we get into this project that we'll have lots of businesses and community organizations that will want to get involved, just like they have in our other projects, our other signature projects. Another unique aspect of this program, and it's common to our signature projects. Our signature projects have to be more than just donating money toward a cause. They have to involve what we call boots on the ground. So part of what we'll be doing is having Rotarians volunteer in the classroom. You saw a slide earlier where Superintendent Jett was reading to students. Well, we're going to have Rotarians reading to students, assisting with classroom materials, assisting with helping students in the classroom, oohing and ahhing over their artwork, whatever the teacher needs. We want Rotarians to experience that preschool classroom and experience that population in our community that they maybe don't have exposure to. Rotarians will also be raising funds. Gary Marsden's got a group together that's out there right now. John will be telling you about a scholarship situation that they're looking at to solicit scholarships for students and raising funds through grants and foundations also. Facility supports is also a common theme in our boots on the ground. When we did the Cop House and Pathways for Youth, we painted, we remodeled, we fixed things, we did all kinds of manual physical labor kinds of things, and we'll be doing that at the Boys and Girls Club too, as needed. Really, their facility is well set for us to do this program there, but there will be some things as we go along that they'll want some physical labor and some participation in that way. Another boots on the ground partnership activity will be community outreach. Right now, we have a group of Rotarians and some school district people that are going to work on recruiting, because many of these families in these neighborhoods aren't aware of preschool opportunities and aren't aware of the importance of them. So they will be recruiting the families and getting them involved in the program. We also will be engaging in community outreach events. We plan to hold some events at the Boys and Girls Club for the families and for the children's, and have Rotarians participate in those. And the Boys and Girls Club is very excited about that, because these preschoolers, these four-year-olds, they hope will be continuing to attend the Boys and Girls Club and be involved in activities as well as their families. I think that pretty much covers boots on the ground, but I'm sure we'll come up with other ideas too. We always do as we get into our signature projects. Another aspect of this project is research. We're going to look for trends with the kindergarten readiness. We're going to be looking at if this four-year-old program, concentrating on these high-need neighborhoods, if that makes a difference in the numbers of students that are ready for kindergarten in the St. Cloud School District. We'll also be looking at academic achievement of these students and attendance and behavior. We'll be following them long-term. You know, we'll be following in the first couple years, but I know the district gathers data on these students traditionally. And we'll be using that data to hopefully solicit some additional grants that we can build the program and add to the program. And we hope also that that research will help the sustainability by showing the legislature and other funding sources that this makes a difference. And we need universal childcare, we need universal preschool. And so we hope the research will be able to add to that and make that a possibility. I'm going to turn it back to Gary to talk about money.
Yeah, Gary's not here, but John is.
I'm John.
It's okay.
That's right, it was Gary's job.
This was Gary's job, and I'll tell you what really got us too was knowing that there were a waiting list of 150 to 200 3 and 4 years who weren't having the opportunity for preschool. That bothered us, and we're going to do something about it. So the budget, 2 classroom teachers, 2 paraprofessionals, operational costs at Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, I'm sorry, and then transportation for field trips. And I know that we'll probably have transportation costs, and once we find out what the enrollment is, we'll find the money for that as well. And then miscellaneous expenses. One of the things I've learned as a Rotarian, I've been really involved with Pathways for Youth and the Cop House and other things. You put the word out that we need something, and those 147 Rotarians, plus the other Rotarians and Rotarackers, which is like Rotary for young adults, they get it. They find it, and they donate it. An example, I can take you through Pathways, and I can show you every wall that every Rotarian painted or every Rotaracker painted to make that facility as marvelous as it is. We will do whatever it takes to get the Boys and Girls Club ready to go. So that's the first one. Where are we going to find the money? Well, we hope that the district will provide the $90,000, which will go to the teacher salaries. We are going to get $500 scholarships from 60 Rotarians, and some may pair up and do $250 each to co-sponsor that. We also are talking to area businesses and those who have connections. I talked to Gary earlier on it. He's having really good success so far, talking to non-Rotarian businesses. And so we'll have that. In addition, the Rotary Foundation. Now you have to understand the money that Rotary raises goes to the St. Cloud Rotary Foundation. They're the charitable arm that distributes it. They've already made the commitment to 60,000 this year, and then because we sustain this, they know that next year we'll be having another 60,000 commitment from the foundation. So when you're there buying popcorn and stuff at Summertime by George, that's how that stuff gets funded. And then additional grants and foundations, of which we're already been in contact with, to come up with 180,000 to pay for this the first year. So
We're ready for questions if you have any.
we are.
Oh, what?
I'm going to take 1 second. Why did we miss one? Yes. It's a great ROI of 7 to 10% for investments in early childhood development produce an annual ROI, return on investment of 7 to 10%. So we're open for questions, but I do want to thank Willie and the other educators, Lori and the others. Sylvia, you still have a couple of Rotarians who can't get their heads around the fact that some of these children have a $4 million word vocabulary deficit without having preschool and that. But that's the kind of thing that really drives it home. Okay, we're open for questions. I apologize for rambling. We're excited about this project. I just want you to know that. We can visualize those 4-year-olds coming on in with mom and dad or their other care providers and taking part in this program.
Thank you very much. And this, again, is an information item, so we're not doing any action tonight. Anybody have any questions or comments? Scott?
You mentioned that high-needs neighborhoods were chosen. How did you choose those neighborhoods?
We talked to the educators who told us where those children are who have not had the opportunity, can't afford preschool, or maybe are not aware of it. And also, we chose neighborhoods where there was a Boys and Girls Club that we could have the space. Now, I've had members in the club say, you know, Wade Park has children who could benefit from this, and we have a couple of classrooms in Quarry View that maybe we could use. There's an East Side Boys and Girls Club that also would have youngsters who could benefit from this program. And one of the things as president of this club, I always find that our folks think big. So I think in their mind, I know in Gary's mind and Gayla's mind, they're already thinking, how can we get the money to do this at the East Side Boys and Girls Club and in Wade Park?
Are you concerned about competing with private businesses that are running daycares or something similar to your facility?
You know, that's certainly a consideration, but at the same time, I'm sure if these children and their families could afford to go to preschool,
Would be.
they would be doing it, and they're not able to. And I go back to Willie's point about opportunity and access for these youngsters, okay? If they start and they don't have that opportunity and access, then they can't even get to the starting line when they go to kindergarten.
Yeah, I can understand that we had to pay to put our kids in
Yeah.
preschool, but we could afford it.
Right, right. I think we would all be happy, well, I shouldn't get into that, if they made universal preschool. But we're not going to wait for that.
Zach?
I was just going to say on that point, and when Governor Dayton was on his way out, they asked him, what was your number one regret? Is it straight, without mumbling, he actually said universal pre-K, right? That was the one thing. So thank you for picking this up and recognizing the need, because we know the benefits. So hopefully you're keeping it alive. So that's hats off to you and then some.
Al?
I have three questions. First of all, I'm going to ask you on, is this program available to all students or all all residents in those neighborhoods, or is it only available to residents that would commit to 742 for their, so they're doing preschool at this point, but when they graduate from preschool and move on to school, are they able to choose charter schools? Are they able to choose private schools? Are they able to go out of the district to another school? Is there any type of requirement on that?
You know, that's a good question. I don't think that ever came up.
I think Lori needs to answer that.
Lori, would you answer
We'll be
that?
using the district selection process, so she can talk about that too.
Our hope is that they would choose 742, and by giving them the opportunity that they would want to stay here, but we can't require that. Our preschool programs are open to all of the students who live in our community, and this will be the same.
Can you talk a little bit about what type of EL support there's going to be as far as English language learning? Is there going to be teachers there that are able to to teach a curriculum that includes EL support?
Yep, and that, again, will be similar to what our preschool classes are within our buildings. We will, more than likely, once we see the needs of the students who enroll, we'll look for that, especially in our paraprofessional positions that we hire. So part of it will be dependent on the students who enroll, and then we'll provide that support as needed.
Lori, when I see the two teachers that are listed up there, is that that's 2 FTE, but it could actually be 4 people, or?
It could be. We're hopeful that we get a consistent person that would want to stay for both morning and afternoon. The position is posted right now because we have some other early childhood openings as well, and it's posted as a 1.0 FTE, and that would be our desire, but it could be filled with 2 if needed.
Lori, it's actually 0.8, right?
0.8, thank you, because it's Monday through Thursday. Good job, Gayla.
And then is the curriculum that's going to be used, is that the same curriculum that we're using in our preschools within the district, or is it going
Yep,
to be
and our preschool program, if you remember, is parent-aware, accredited, strong support from MDE. So we will use that as our basis because we want all of our students to have that same curricular base as they come into kindergarten. But what's added to that are some of the experiences that Gayla talked about. Some of the field trip experiences and those types of things will be expanded in these 2 programs.
Can I tell a little story? Rotary was pairing with the Cop House folks, and they were putting on the hockey program down in Southside Park for the youngsters. And I looked, and here were all these youngsters coming out of the Boys and Girls Club there with helmets and sticks and hockey stuff, and they were having the opportunity to experience playing hockey. And I thought, this is really cool. And these are the kind of opportunities, not hockey necessarily, but field trips to the new children's museum in town, or to businesses or something to show them the opportunities that are out there for all these children in our community. Somebody sent the elevator back down to us in our careers. And I'm too old to have experienced preschool or kindergarten, but I know in talking to the experts, preschool and kindergarten are like so important. So why can't everybody have a chance at that? Sorry.
Monica?
Well, thank you very much to all the Rotary for doing this. This is great, and we have really needed for a long time. Couple of questions about sustainability. So you did mention a couple of things that you're working on it and doing. So one thing is for Lori, we're making a commitment as a school district. And is this something that we are expecting it to be year to year? And for the Rotary, is that something that the Rotary is going to take on forever? Is that this is going to be a signature project for the Rotary, and it's going to be like by Summer by George and those kind of things until we get a universal daycare, preschool.
It's our intention, and also I want to point out that the club board voted to approve this, and the full membership voted to approve this signature project, which is our requirement when we make a commitment like this.
With a 94 point something
I know, it was
endorsement, yeah.
incredible. We did it in terms of we would do this for a 2-year commitment, hoping that maybe there would be universal, but like all the other things that we've done, we'll continue to do as long as the need is there.
So my other comment is about EL students. I'm with Al in the need for support for EL students. I do want to make emphasis in how children learn language. And when we're talking about 4-year-olds, we're talking about kids that are learning to speak, not to speak English. They're learning to speak in general. Part of the problem and the deficit that children get is because we actually confuse them with getting a second language in at that time. And what I'm saying by that is not that kids cannot learn a second language at the same time. They can. But one thing for you to keep in mind is that they do need support in their mother language. They need support in their strongest language that they have at home. And that's one of the problems that we have. And that is something that I have spent a lot of time in my life advocating for. I have seen children that had been with a speech therapist because they had deficit in English and in Spanish, that they thought that they were going to, that they were not catch up, because when you have that gap in language, when you have those deficits of words that you're talking about, it is really hard to have kids catching up, right? This kid that I have actually a real example with, that we work with in one of the programs that I used to run in my last job, or a past job, actually catch up because the kid needed just getting out of the confusion. It wasn't a learning deficit that the kid was experiencing. It was just a problem in having confusion in his mother language. So that's just to encourage you to look at more on that, to learn more about it, and to look for support from people that speak the languages of the kids that you're going to have more there. Not that just speak the languages, but they're people that actually know about language development, so so they can give them the support that they need for their learning. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. One more thing. Well, there might be more than one, but one thing for now. The members of our Rotary Club are going to get more out of this program, I think, even than the children. We are going to experience the children and the families, and we are going to know more about our community. And, you know, one of the reasons we do Summertime by George, the one reason we do it is to bring the community together. And this is just going to be another way for us to bring the community together. Sorry.
Very seldom I like to disagree with John Badette. But I want you to know that you are changing the future for these children. They're going to get a lot more out of it than you will. They will not be making $30,000 a year. They'll be making $60,000 to $90,000 a year.
That's our hope. So that's a good point for us to disagree on, Les.
Yes.
You know, some of our Rotarians were thinking too, wouldn't it be great to track these students throughout their career, through high school, going to college? And wouldn't it be great if we could set up college scholarships for these youngsters?
You may find they don't need it.
And that's even better.
You get them pointed in the right direction,
Yep.
they'll figure it out by the time they get graduate from high school.
And won't that be wonderful to be able to point back to the fact of the preschool for success resulted in success?
Just keep their names them out when they're 28 years old and see what they're doing.
That'd be great.
Al?
Just a question on devices. Are we, right now we do provide devices for preschool, correct? And are we going to be providing devices for this? Do we have, and are we going to be providing devices for the preschool program here? Yes?
Yes?
I already answered it, yes.
Natalie?
Yes, there was massive rejoicing when we heard about this program at our last meeting. As these guys have heard me talk about before, I was a teacher in Georgia during their first year of universal pre-K. And I'm thinking about the 6% of people who didn't vote for it. And just to kind of give you some background there, and in the reading that I've done about universal pre-K for Georgia students, that the students that benefit the most are the most disadvantaged students. And so that is great, that is also where we're putting our focus on as well. I love hearing our superintendent, of course, use that asset-based language. Achievement gap is extremely demeaning. I still use it sometimes because I forget about that, but that access and opportunity that you're not only giving to these students, but also to the community and to the parents, and that we're doing this wraparound programming. Very Paul Wellstone of you, way to go. The thing I was thinking about, because I know when my kids were in preschool, and I actually worked at the church where the preschool was, and then I got free tuition, that's the only reason I worked at that church, because it was like a wash. But I had to figure out how to get them somewhere else in the middle of the day because there was no aftercare. So I'm assuming Boys and Girls Club will be doing before and after care for these students as well?
That's one of the things that we're looking at the schedules of, and we have a meeting coming up with transportation soon to work through all of those details. Part of it, and we have spent hours and hours with people from the Boys and Girls Club. Their goal would be that the students can stay there. They don't do a lot with preschool
Right, that's
programs
what I
at
was
this
thinking.
time. So we're exploring all of those opportunities, and we'll look at community resources for that. So that schedule and all of those pieces are still being worked out.
That's great. Yeah, that's a lot of the times, even sometimes the not middle class, but like lower middle class folks have a hard time with preschool just because you can't get off in the middle of the day unless you are privileged enough to have a flexible job to, pick up your kids and bring them to daycare. So thanks for thinking about that. Thanks again.
It sounds like you're going to be gathering lots of data and doing a longitudinal study. How are we going to deal with the privacy issues?
We have a lot of partner organizations that we work with, and we do data share agreements with them. A lot of times we remove any student identifiers from the information that we share with partners, but we would have all of that data internally. So we would when we get to that point, we would do some type of data share agreement or provide kind of general data that takes out any distinguishers.
How do you do that with a scholarship? I mean, if you're doing a longitudinal study and specific kids have done well and they want to give scholarships at some point, how do you handle that without revealing names?
I think that, by that point, so 14 years from now, we would have to do parent releases so that the parents would release us to be able to give that information to the partners.
And like Les says, maybe there won't be a need for college.
Thank you very much. This is very exciting. I think we're going to finish up with Mr. Jett's comments here.
So I heard the word excitement, passion. And for me, I'm excited. So I first want to say thank you to John. Thank you to Gayla. Gary's not here. I just want to make sure to say thank you, not just to the three of you, but to the club for that night of erudition. And I'm excited. And you said you told a story, and for me, I talk about access and opportunity, and that's always been big with me. But you made me think of something. You talked about, and it's hard to get me to think about something. You talked about, or somebody here mentioned, tracking kids from 3, 4 years old throughout, and it sparked something in me because I was one of those 3 or 4 year olds in a study at the University of Minnesota, and I never thought about that until that came up now, and they tracked me from 3, 4 years old all the way through high school. And I got tested every year. It was just this thing at the University of Minnesota. And so it's making me have this flashback moment to 10,000 years ago. But there's something to that. And the experiences and the power and the confidence that gave me in terms of I had access and I had opportunity and I was exposed to people. And and so I get choked up with that. I want to say thank you for the partnership. I want to say it's an honor. I want to say that it's an outstanding opportunity. And I'm just thankful for people recognizing and wanting to partner with the district and provide this moment. And it's a monumental moment. It's a life-changing moment for our little ones, for our babies. And so thank you for that.
Okay, next up, another information item, the 10-year long-term facilities maintenance plan presented tonight by Amy Scalrud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services.
Good evening, Chair Hawes, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. And we lost it again. There we go. So I have a number of items on the agenda tonight, the first of which is our annual long-term facilities maintenance plan. So this is an item that comes to the board every year as kind of a preliminary advanced step of the budget process related to the levy. So our levy will come to the board in September. One of the components of the annual levy is the long-term facilities maintenance levy. And so the long-term facility maintenance revenue comes in two forms. There is a levy component, which is the majority of it, and then there is a small aid component of the levy. And some of you who have been on the board for a while may be familiar with the old verbiage where we used to have health and safety and then deferred maintenance or alternative facilities. Back a number of years ago, the long-term facilities maintenance program replaced kind of those old statutory funding sources, rolled them all into one new funding program. Just a quick reminder, and this is not new information, nothing has changed in the last few years as far as what the allowable uses are for long-term facilities maintenance funds. But just as a reminder, there are essentially three broad categories. They can be used for ADA or accessibility type projects. They can be used for projects that meet that statutory health and safety guidelines that mirror the old health and safety statute. And then they can be used for what's a broad definition of projects necessary to prevent further erosion of facilities. And so that's pretty broad. But general guidelines is that it has to be a district-owned facility. So if we are renting a facility, we can't use LTFM funds to do improvements at a facility that we don't own. Remodeling is not allowed. We can't use it to increase square footage or do an addition, and then no new construction out of LTFM funds. The proposed 2022-23 budget, and so we're a year in advance of the actual budget you're going to be approving later this evening. And the reason for that is because this is the budget that will go into the levy next fall, which is always a year in advance. So the levy that the board will approve next fall and get certified in December relates to the 2022-23 fiscal year. So a lot of crossing over of years there. But we have two components of the LTFM budget. The base is the actual annual expenditures, which is proposed to be at $8 million for next year. That is an increase from the current year or current levy, which will be part of the 21-22 budget of $7.5 million. So we've been steadily trying to increase the LTFM budgets, knowing that we have some big projects, particularly some HVAC projects in the future that need to be addressed, and to make sure that we have that set at an amount that is really sufficient to get all of our needs met in our buildings. We are anticipating with the decline due to COVID that we will have some negative enrollment-related levy adjustments, and so are expecting that increase, projecting that to be budget neutral as far as the levy, and that it wouldn't actually result in a tax increase. And then the second component of the LTFM budget is the debt service portion, which is $2,783,832, and that is to cover the previous bonds that were issued in 2015, and that funded a number of HVAC projects over about a 3-year period. So that brings the total budget to just under $10.8 million. And then we'll quickly look at the list of projects that would be proposed for 2022-23. The first projects are the building-specific identified projects that we have. You'll see at the top there, we also have health and safety and some salaries and professional services. Those are kind of annual set-aside amounts based on estimates. And then the first actual projects we have relate to the new Katherine Johnson Education Center. There is a significant portion of work that's being done in the next year, in the current upcoming year, the 21-22 year. But there are a few portions that will end up being after July 1st as we wrap up that project. So there is about $200,000 for roofing and about $180,000 for the parking lot. Other building-specific projects that we have, some HVAC work at Lincoln, the north canopy replacement, which you may recall we had talked about doing this year. We're doing that project at South, but that one had come in over the bid threshold, and so that one was delayed until next summer. Clearview parking lot, which would be in conjunction with the secure controlled entrance project that we're doing, that the board approved funding for. Westwood restrooms, north plumbing fixtures, and then some allocations for district-wide kitchen equipment. Anything that is permanently affixed to the building for kitchen equipment can be replaced with LTFM funds, and some of those items are in need of replacement, so we're doing kind of a one-time mass inventory to get those updated and replaced, and then district-wide paving. And then the rest of the items are really also just district-wide kind of allocations, knowing that Lincoln, being one of our oldest buildings, is certainly one that is in need of a lot of these interior work, such as painting, flooring, casework, ceiling tile replacement, LED lighting. So that building will be a focus, as well as Talahi, Discovery, and Oak Hill, knowing that those kind of are age-wise the next priority on our list based on our 10-year plan. And then you'll also see down at the bottom, 1.5 million currently unallocated. There's a few reasons for that. One being that we don't know exactly with the Katherine Johnson building what the timing of work is going to be. And so we may end up with more of that shifting to 22, 23. And then we also don't know if we would potentially have a larger project that would come up. We know Apollo Roofing is on the horizon at some point and could potentially be paired with a future referendum, but we may reach a point where repairs necessitate doing that first. So that's why you see kind of a larger chunk in the unallocated portion than what we would see previously. So there's no action tonight. The state requires that the LTFM plan gets approved by July 31st. And so this will be on consent agenda for approval at the next meeting, but always want to bring it forward in case there's questions, concerns with the amount that we intend to levy, or anything before we bring it to approval. Are there any questions on the LTFM plan?
Yeah, why is the debt service so high? You've got an $8 million plan and $2 million worth of debt service. That's like 25%. What's going on?
So that's based on when the board took action in 2000, I assume the board action was in 2014. That would have been prior to me being in the position. But that was based on the board's approval of needing to issue that debt. The amount that you see actually equated to 37 million in projects. And so, when you're issuing that amount of debt and you spread that over the life of the bond, which are typically about 20 years, you end up with a payment, in that $2 million range. And so it's really just a mechanism to be able to get some of those bigger upfront costs where you need a large amount of money all at once, and be able to spread that tax impact over the years.
Thank you.
Amy, what was the part of South that we didn't do that is getting here? I missed that part.
So it was the canopies. So at South, we are actually doing that one this year in conjunction with kind of the whole site plan and everything that's going on. It's actually on kind of the main front entry where they have those awnings over the main door. It's to replace those, update those, have that be a more cohesive look with the building. We had intended to do both North and South this summer, but when we got the quotes back, the one at North was over the statutory threshold for requiring bids by quite a bit. And so the decision was made to wait and actually bid that and do that work next summer. Just for North. So South was less expensive. South was under the threshold. And so since we already had other planned work at South and the building was kind of offline for the summer because of other projects, we did move forward with that because that one was under.
Okay, let's move on to our first action item, approval of the 2021 budget, again presented by Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services.
So we're not going to go over every number. I know everyone's really disappointed because we went through everything in detail at the last meeting, but we'll just really quickly kind of for the 2021 budget, look at the budget adjustment amounts and just recap what the adjustments related to, and then have any questions on the budget adjustment for 2021 before we move for approval. So most significant, which you'll see on the revenue and the expenditure side in a minute, budget change for the year is in the general fund. We have about $6 million in additional revenue that's been added to the budget, and that again is related to all of the CARES funding and the corresponding expenditures. The operating capital adjustment is to reflect some additional revenue that was received from the sale of devices beyond what was budgeted. And then food service and community service, those adjustments relate to various grants that were received that weren't known at the time of budget, with the majority of that in the food service fund being our fresh fruit and veggie grant, which is an annual budget adjustment. On the expenditure side, again, most of these budget adjustments just correlate directly back to the revenue. So the expenditures, the majority of, or really all of that adjustment is related to the increase in the federal funding, both COVID-related and title or other grants. Transportation, as you might recall from the last presentation, was due to some buses that were purchased out of transportation fund balance. That was a shift between the 2 years. And then operating capital, as a reminder, was 2 items. It's a portion of that related to the Katherine Johnson purchase of that building, and then a portion related to iPads or Chromebooks, excuse me, that were purchased this year that would normally have been budgeted next year, just due to making sure we get them in time. Down in the other fund section, food service, community services, again, that's just the offset of the revenue related to those grants. And then building construction was some of those items that the board had approved using the remaining bond funds for. And then this just summarizes where all of those projected fund balances would be for each fund after accounting for all of the budget revisions. And again, we reviewed these all at the last meeting, and so we aren't going to go over each of these. So if there's questions, I can take those. Otherwise, we would be looking to approve the revised budget.
Al?
I would motion that we approve the revised budget for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
We have a motion by Al and a second by Scott. Any further discussion? Les, can you please call roll?
Monica Segura Schwartz. Natalie Ringsmuth.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Zach Dorhold. Yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Thank you, Les. Next up is approval of the 2021-2022 budget, again presented by Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services.
Thank you. And again, we won't go over everything in detail. We'll just briefly run through all of the funds. So the first is the general fund, which again is broken down into 3 sub-funds: operating, transportation, and operating capital. And we're projecting a slight surplus for next year, and projected end of the year, when you combine all 3, having a healthy projected fund balance of just under $22 million. We have 2 special revenue funds, that's food service and community education. Those funds essentially budget and operate on a break-even basis. So you typically see that projected, what you would call in a business net profit or loss, we refer to as excess of revenues over or under expenditures, being fairly close to zero. Really just setting those budgets to balance out every year. No significant changes really going into next year, with the exception of the food service revenue really shifting primarily to federal, with the federal waiver for the free meal program being extended through next year. Capital projects funds and debt service funds. Capital projects funds, as you see, is starting to taper down, and eventually that fund will close out as the remaining proceeds are spent. And so what's budgeted there is what was approved by the board for those projects out of the remaining bond funds. And then the debt service fund, again, is really set based on the pre-existing debt and those bond payment schedules. And then the last funds are our internal service funds. And again, all of those having healthy financial positions. Both the dental and the health insurance currently have about 7 or 7.5 months worth of expenditures, which is really where you minimally want to be, with those having healthy reserve fund balances. Are there any questions on anything on the 21-22 budget?
Okay, looking for a motion to approve the 2021-2022 budget.
I would move that we approve the 2021-2022 preliminary, it's not preliminary, it'll be the, well, budget as discussed.
Second.
We have a motion by Al and a second by Scott. Any further discussion? Les, you're up. Can you call roll?
Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz,
Yes.
Scott Andresen,
Yes.
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Zach Dorhold. Les Green is yes.
Thank you. Next up, another action item, approval of expenditures for co-op activities, again presented by Amy Scalarud, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, and online, Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education.
Thank you. So I will start by talking about the action part of this item, and then Lori will give a little bit of backstory on some of the process moving forward in preparation for another presentation that will come in July about kind of co-op activities in general. But what is on the agenda tonight is specific to a funding request related to co-op activities for uniform equipment and other items. And so our number of co-ops that the district partakes in has increased significantly over the last number of years. And as activities have become a co-op, there's sort of been a non-standard process in terms of how they identify and brand themselves as it relates to colors or logos. And so we've ended up with kind of a plethora of different color combinations and mascots. And so really just looking at trying to bring that all into one cohesive co-op district branded identity. And in so doing that, we know that we're going to have uniforms and other equipment and things that will need to be replaced, and looking to have some authority to make that expenditure out of reserves versus trying to phase those in. And with what we have within our existing annual operating budgets for uniforms wouldn't obviously be enough to do those one-time purchases. And so we have two items, really, when you look at the administrative recommendation. The first is an amount not to exceed $200,000, which would come from operating capital. That is the bulk of the authorization to cover uniforms, equipment, and other items that would have meet the definition of operating capital, having that useful life beyond 1 year. When discussed at Board Finance Committee, the committee made the recommendation also to allocate some funds for communicating and marketing of the new branding. And so that would not be an operating capital allowable expense. That would be a general fund expense, which is where we've added the additional $25,000 from the general fund to cover those sort of expenses. And so that is the funding portion. And then I will turn it over to Lori to give a little bit of update on the process and where we're at in terms of coming up with that consistent branding.
Thank you, Amy. And good evening to COG Board of Education. I'm glad to be joining you remotely this evening. As we look to align our co-ops and make them consistent and supportive and inclusive of all of our students on both sides of town, we decided to model our process after the board policy on naming, and are using the wonderful example that Gary set by as he worked with our community to name the Katherine Johnson Center. So we are going to be very intentional about including members of both Tech and Apollo in our committee. We're gathering next week as a committee, and then we'll meet again in July. All head coaches were invited, as well as a few current parents and students that were selected by our high school ADs and administration. Of course, our high school ADs will be our middle level activities coordinators will be invited, administration, and a couple of community members with a vested interest. We will be reviewing suggestions and taking suggestions for the co-op name the colors, along with a uniform design. So we are really excited about the inclusivity of the process and looking forward to just a great product that will be finished to review in the July board meeting.
Is that everything?
Yep, that's all we have, unless there's questions.
Looking for a motion for approval of the expenditures for the co-op activities. Sure. Do you want a motion to approve it and then
Yeah.
you want to do that, or you want to talk? Doesn't matter to me. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I had some questions for Lori.
Sure.
First, could you define this cooperative that we're putting together? Is it for athletics where we have not enough kids on both Apollo and Tech or Cathedral? Is that why we're co-oping? Some of the people in the audience might not understand what we're working on here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Putnam, I'll take this one. And so I know that I've had individual or conversations with individual board members about co-ops, and I know that, Scott, I know that you, the way I just heard you say it, we as a board might understand it, but there's people out in the audience that might not. And so that's what you're asking me to go ahead and define. And so with that being said, co-ops, so this is activities, and activities is not just athletics. It could be robotics. It could be debate. It could be anything that you could co-op. But in this realm that we're talking about, what you're going to see, what the world is going to see rather soon or shortly, is activities. It's athletics. Example could be girls softball. Okay, and the rationale is, and it's not just softball, but I'm using softball. Why? Because you might not have enough numbers at one of our high schools, and what we're looking to do is make that first opportunity with District 742 kids. So you're trying to have Apollo and Tech, or Tech and Apollo. And in other sports that we've had, we've co-opted with, just say, a Rotary or a holding forward, and it could be a skiing moment. But what we're trying to do is concentrate right away in terms of St. Cloud Tech and St. Cloud Apollo. So that's what we're looking to do, and it's because of numbers. And you're trying to provide opportunity for our students to be able to participate. Sometimes it's a safety moment. You know, and a few years ago, I think it was hockey. And also we didn't have enough kids, and we were having younger kids play with older kids. And so sometimes that could be a safety issue too. But it's really to provide opportunities for our students in 742.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See if I can remember the question. Uniforms. Team name. So that when we have Tech Apollo, Apollo Tech, there will be a combined name and uniform for the team. And now I know where my question was going. What does that do for if you combine the two schools, because we don't have enough kids, but we now have a high school combination of 3,500 kids, do we fall into a different category?
Got it. So the question is, because of enrollment in numbers, does that take us to a different classification with the Minnesota State High School League?
Yes.
Okay, that's the question. And so with that, you know, our activities coordinators are not sitting here, but they do not see that. You usually do not see that as a problem or an issue when you first do co-ops. And so the answer to that, when I've listened to them, and I have a little bit of high school league experience, you usually do not see that result in a change in classification. And when I say classification, that's going from AA to AAA, or AAA to 4A, or in football, sometimes it's, it could be a 4A to 5A or 5A to 6A. Usually that does not happen.
Go ahead.
Are you hearing me okay if I leave the microphone like this, or do you need that?
Can you hear less okay?
I can hear it.
Okay.
The question is, because my experience is limited in this. It has to do with wrestling only, where I was I had skin in the game, as we say. And the question had to do with Granite City Baptist and Cathedral. Might have had one or two people out of 30 on the wrestling team. Does that involve a uniform issues and things of that nature? If it's not Tech or Apollo?
So first and foremost, and I'm hearing you say Granite City Baptist and Cathedral. And so none of those co-ops in the process, none of that is going anywhere, okay? In terms of the uniform, most of those are already established. And so there's not a change to that. And when I'm having conversation with the activities coordinators, it's not the uniform change. You don't see it. In other words, when it's Cathedral, when it's Granite City Baptist, you don't see that. That's something that's been discussed before this kind of conversation.
So the question, in past co-ops, and the only one I've been involved in it, was like, those kids joined Tech's team and were wrestling for Tech. But if you looked at the roster on the big screens up at the tournaments, it was Tech, Granite City Baptist, and Cathedral, although the uniforms were Tech. So the question is, will that have to change, or is that discussion?
Those will remain the same. And then, but these other co-ops, that's where it could change.
So, and then the final question.
Really, the authority is to change the existing ones as well, the budget.
He's not asking the question about the budget. He's asking the question about uniforms. And so I understand the question he's asking. And so
Right.
So the question I'm asking.
Good
all
with
right,
that. Yeah, it's not the budget, it's just the concept was always, they joined the teams from outside the district joined the district team and became part of the district team.
Correct.
The question is, will that change? If it's Cathedral and Holdingford?
No.
Only if it's also then pulling in Apollo. So if Apollo Tech Cathedral, if it becomes where it's both, then that would be one that we would be looking at.
Okay, then that's where my question centers around. Are we talking about a uniform that would be a Tech Apollo uniform, and without considering whether Rotary or Cathedral should be a part of the visual uniform? You know, am I clear on that?
So I understand the question, I believe.
You might be closer than I am in terms of understanding it.
And I'm hearing you talk about certain school districts, okay? And in conversation with certain school districts and their superintendents, we're having this conversation here, and they have not had a chance to have it with their school board or community. And so I'm cautious to discuss that because they've asked me not to necessarily go there yet.
Yeah, and I think I was hearing Dr. Putnam talk about that they had to talk about a lot of different issues.
Yes.
So that will, if it comes up, it comes up.
It will be in that process that she was discussing.
Okay, I have enough information for me not to get into trouble.
Okay. Thank you.
Al?
I have a question as to the committee or the name selection committee. Is there an avenue with this committee for general public input? So if I'm not on the committee, but I've got a great name or a great idea, is there some way for me to submit that to the committee?
Do you want me to take that one, Superintendent Jett?
Yes, because I turned and looked at you on the screen.
I don't think she can see
I
that.
couldn't see that. What we had planned on doing, and the reason we spread our meetings out so far is about a 3.5 week window in between, is that we planned on making public the names of the folks who are on this committee. We were going to put that on our website, and so that people would know who they could talk to. They could certainly email any one of those members. And then the task force members are actually going to be tasked with going out and speaking to their teams. With only a few student reps, we know that, and family members, we know that there are many other stakeholders who will want to be engaged in the process. So it's actually, we've planned a two-way communication stream.
Can I get a clarification? Tonight, this is an action item, and we're talking about and making an action on, for moving forward on what's it going to look like if Tech and Apollo are co-oping together? No.
No.
We're only spending.
Yep. And part of,
Allocating dollars.
correct. And part of that is so that as we get to those committee meetings and those meetings with the communication back and forth to parents and to teams and coaches, that first question is always asked, well, who's going to pay for this? And so it's nice to have that commitment of the board and that authority to spend and the commitment to do it and to replace the equipment, because parents always, and coaches, their number one concern is, well, you know, do I have to fundraise for this, or where is this coming from? And so this is really an advance funding authorization to set us up to go into those meetings to say, the board has committed financially to pull resources from reserves to do this. This is not voting on any sort of what that cohesive branding would look like. That presentation and information would come in July.
Right, but we're also not voting on who's co-oping with who
No.
and anything
No.
like that. Okay, thank you. Les?
But we are authorized, I believe we are authorizing the committee that's being put together to make decisions about how that's going to happen and what the branding will happen. Is that correct?
This evening is about the budget or allocating the dollars, and board members had asked for information as related to the process. And so that's why that part was brought here this evening. But the way it's titled is just the approval of the expenditures.
Yeah, I trust the process and I trust the people. I just want to make sure that we're clear on what authority the committee has to make decisions about branding.
And I would say not decisions, but recommendations.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good.
Monica?
I just wanted to clarify, I don't know what you wanted to, but what I understand is that that decision-making about that does not belong to the board. The decision-making about the branding and about those does not belong to the board. That is an operational matter, is that correct?
It is correct. We will be bringing the information to the board. We will be sharing, this is what happened. We will be explaining the process, the decisions that were made, how we ended up at that point. Correct.
So the other thing that I wanted to say is that I was very interested in this process because I, as a board member, did not want to put money in uniforms without making sure that they will have a process that I will encourage for having. So that's part of the reason why this is here, maybe confusing. But I was very interested in learning about what the process was and how we will be branding and if it has enough participation of the students, which takes me to my question. Lori, can you please tell us the process again, like in bullet points, so I can get it, because I did not completely get it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't catch all of that. Could you repeat that? The process for which?
The process for the branding, if you can just set it like in bullet points.
Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. So we are making very sure that we are including community members from both sides of town, from TAC and Apollo. We met with head coaches this week and have invited any who would like to take part, whether they are part of the current teams slated to be co-opt or not, so that all are able to be part of that conversation. We've invited current parents and students, our high school ADs, our middle level activities coordinators, administration and community members with a vested interest. We'll discuss next week what the process is going to be for deciding, and then talk about how we gather additional input, what their responsibilities are, and then we'll come back in July and review all of the information and put together the information for the board to hear. I believe it's on the 21st, the July board meeting.
Is there any safeguards to make sure that it's about a 50-50 split north-south instead of, say, being overwhelmed by a south side presence or a north side presence?
Certainly that's something that we are taking a look at and we're balancing with the ADs. It's part of our conversation about, even on Monday when we talked, that we are a district. And while we certainly have our pride in our schools and are intending to grow our teams at both Tech and Apollo, we are representing all kids and making sure all of our students feel included and recognize that they belong in the branding of the co-ops. We will make sure that there is not one voice that dominates.
Yeah, and I would just repeat that I think it is important that somehow we have a channel of communication open to the community at large to give input, and it should go to, I don't know if I agree that just publishing the names of the people on the committee is an effective way to do it, because I'm not looking for any committee members to filter out, I like that idea or I don't like that idea, so I'm going to bring it forward. I think if community members have an idea and they have if they have some thoughts concerning the process, that it should come to the entire committee, not one person in the committee. So there should be a vehicle for that to happen. And that could be going to an if it went to an administrator or someone who's on the committee but employee for the district, but publishing that. If you have suggestions, like if you have suggestions, please email your suggestion to Lori Putnam, and Lori will bring it to the committee. But I think the danger in having a parent on the committee and then someone going to that parent is the parent's going to go, I don't like that, so I'm not even going to bring it forward. And so it's just.
Thank you for that question, Al.
Scott?
Are we going to have any people from Cathedral on this committee?
Is the question, are we having people from Cathedral on the committee? Certainly we'll include the AD.
Monica? Go ahead, Elle.
Cathedral only co-ops on a very few sports, so I don't know that they should be involved in the decision-making for the entire program.
The invitation to their activities coordinator is because it impacts them, but other than that, this is a District 742 moment. And so I just want to make sure that I clarify that or emphasize that. It's a District 742 moment.
Monica, can you go back and tell me, again, you said you're hesitant about allocating money. Can you explain that to me again? I just want to know how you're feeling about this. And
I feel okay about this.
you feel okay about this?
Yeah.
Okay. Glad to hear that.
I would move that we approve the expenditures as outlined by Amy for the co-op activities project to move forward.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion by Al and a second by Monica. Any further discussion? Les, can you please call roll?
Monica Segura Schwartz,
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth,
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Les Green is yes. Zach Dorholt. Yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Thank you, Les. Okay, last up for action items tonight is approval of a closed session to consider strategy for labor negotiations. We would are wanting to approve tonight that we will have a closed meeting for the school board to discuss negotiation strategy. The meeting would be Wednesday, June 23rd at 4:30 PM at the district administrative office. And I just wanted to remind people that Board Policy 205 outlines specifically what we can do and following strict guidelines regarding closed meetings. And one of the requirements is that we announce the date and time and purpose of the meeting, and then get approval for it at a public meeting. So that is why it is on our agenda for tonight. And I think we have created a time that all board members are able to attend. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Les and a second by Scott. Any further discussion? And Monica will be right back.
Yeah, about the length of time.
Closed session like this, we do open it for, I mean, it's open in public and closed, correct? And then we come back and we open it again.
That's what I think. It talks about recording it.
Is there,
That's committee reports tonight.
I
Okay, I don't want it now, I'm just wondering.
I could do it now. Good night.
I wouldn't want to do that.
in your superintendent's report, are you going to say anything about the Catherine Johnson? Did the family come to an agreement with us, or?
Yes, I wasn't going to talk about that here. I thought that was shared. Gary talked about that at the last meeting.
Okay. Well, no, it wasn't finished. It was, our attorneys were talking with their attorneys. You could talk about the scholarship and all kinds of stuff, but was it ever finalized?
So that it's a yes, thumbs up, all that good stuff. But I believe that there's still some signatures that need to happen, and you talk about scholarships in terms of how that can happen. That's still something that's in the works.
Okay.
Okay, we had Jan knows who the motion and second was. So Les, will you please call roll?
Just, Monica, are you aware what the motion was? I didn't know when she got up and walked out.
Oh, I'm not sure either.
It's
Motion.
Go ahead, Madam Chair. I'm talking for you.
We were waiting for you to vote that we have a motion and a second to approve the closed session for Wednesday, June 23rd, 4:30 PM at the district office.
Ready?
And so Les is going to call roll.
Les Green is yes. Zach Dorhold? Yes. Al Dahlgren?
Yes.
Scott Andresen?
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz?
Yes.
Natalie Ringsmuth?
Yes.
Shannon Hawes?
Yes. All right. Okay. Okay, next up is the superintendent's report presented by Willie Jett, Superintendent of District 742 Schools.
So pardon me for my hitting a delete button when I should not have hit the delete button. So, good evening, Chair Hawes and members of the board. First and foremost, Community Options, our CO2 students, 15 of them, recently participated in a unique STEM class held at St. Cloud State University. Professors Chuck Henches and Mark Schroll taught students about CAD drawings and how to use 3D printing. All the students made money clips and other items that they were able to design and assemble. CO2 staff and students are appreciative of this wonderful opportunity to learn in a post-secondary setting. Next, David Boyd Jr., Erastus Ancino, Zachary Lambert, and Peter Dorn will compete at the Minnesota State High School League Track and Field State Tournament in the 4x100 meter race. Sam Brewer will compete in the 3,200 meter run. Noelle Hackemuller and Brooke Verkins will also compete for the girls in various events. The state tournament will be held June 17th through the 19th at St. Michael Albertville High School. Good luck. Congratulations to Apollo's track and field athletes Noel Hackenmuller and David Boyd Jr. for breaking school records. Noel broke the 300-meter hurdle record with a time of 46.80. If anybody has ever witnessed that race or participated in it, that's just something that I won't even talk about it, but usually you need a garbage bucket after that race because it is extremely exhausting. And the prior state record stood since 1986. David Boyd Jr. broke Jaden Lister's 200-meter dash record of 22.54, which was set in 2018. David ran a time of 22.32. And next, Tech junior Nemo Abdi will compete in the Distinguished Young Women of Minnesota State Finals for college scholarships and a chance to continue competing at the national level. Also, Scoutmaster Paul Novak of Scout Troop 84 is proud to announce Apollo Senior Brandon Zimmer has become an Eagle Scout, a Scout's highest rank. Zimmer's Eagle project was to construct a pergola and an outdoor seating area at Kennedy Community School. He led a team of Scouts and adult volunteers to fundraise and construct the pergola. Once completed, he dedicated it to a school volunteer who passed away. Congratulations, Brandon. Next, Tech senior Brianna Doom will compete at the HOSA International, the Health Occupation Students of America, in the job-seeking category on June 23rd. In the last one on my superintendent's report is the following. It's for Dr. Sylvia Huff. It's to recognize her that this is her last meeting. She has accepted the position at the national organization as the Vice President of Research for Project Lead the Way. When I think about Sylvia, the very first thing that comes to my mind is extremely gifted. And what I recognize is that Sylvia is a teacher. She's an educator. She has the ability to take numbers, charts, information, and data and simplify it so that even I can understand it. What she's done is she's spoiled us, and she's challenged us to do better for our young people. So Sylvia, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being you and providing us an outstanding foundation. Dr. Huff.
Thank you.
And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Thank you. Okay, last up is Board of Education Standing Committee reports. Not sure, we'll start at the top here. Achievement, Integration, and Equity Committee. Natalie, do you have a report? Nope. Board Development, Policy, and Governance. Monica Seeger-Schwartz, Chair.
So yes, I had a report last time. I forgot that I had a report last time, so I'm gonna give my report right now. We did not have any policies to discuss at the time, and in board development, we were talking about a possibility of having a retreat for the board and what would the retreat will be and what is the goal of the retreat. We thought that it was important to have some time for the board to be together, and it has been a year that we have been actually being face to face, so we recognize that it's important to have a time for working together and bonding. We were discussing some of the experiences that board members have had in the past in the retreat and what had been valued. We'll like input from board members about what do you value and what would you like to see in the retreat. So just wanted to mention that our conversation was exploratory, and it was talking about a retreat and talking about the possibility of having it and when would it be a good time to have it. In one of our retreats that we had in the past, we were talking about the data that was collected previous the referendum for tech as the data about enrollment and for us, and was a whole study that we did back in the day. We were discussing that value of that had been for us learning about it and something like that, or what things like that would be important for us to consider. So just wanted to let you know that this was our discussion, and please let us know, any member of the committee or myself, about what would you like to see in a retreat, and when do you think that is a good time for it?
Thank you. Okay, Finance, Al Dahlgren, Chair.
Finance Committee met on June 10th. Gary, Scott, me, Carl, Amy, Monica, and Willie were present. We had 3 items on the agenda, the first of which I'll talk about. It was the Trobex abatement update. If you remember, in a meeting, we talked about the Trobex abatement briefly and asked Amy if she would get us some information on where that stands. She reported that the city of St. Joseph notified her that the construction project that Trobex Bus had requested abatement for has not yet been started. The original abatement agreement had specific dates which are no longer correct. So if Trobex decides to go ahead with the project, the board would have to approve a new agreement. If the dollar amount on the agreement is increased, the agreement would have to come to the Board Finance Committee first to review the new amount before it would come to the board. The other 2 subjects that we talked about, I'm not going to discuss here because we already have. We had the 10-year long-term facilities maintenance plan and the co-op uniforms and equipment.
Okay, thank you. Legislative Committee, Zach Dorholt.
The legislature still does not have an education bill. They have about 9 days left.
Thanks. And last up, Personnel Negotiations Committee, Les
No
Green.
report.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, thank you for watching tonight. That adjourns our meeting at 8:10 PM, and we will be back July 21st. Have a good night. Thank you.
I can't read my own writing. So I typed it, and then I went to enlarge it, and it just, whoop, was gone. And I thought, no! And then I knew we were next. I was like, oh,
Do you have a Mac?
yes.
If you press Command Z,